So the newly elected Labor government says it's got a plan to tackle climate change, but the same government has also extended the life of one of the country's biggest gas plants. So what's going on? Let me catch you up on the North West Shelf gas extension approval, what happened, what it means, and why it's so controversial. This is Karratha in the Pilbara region of northwestern Australia. It's home to Indigenous rock paintings dating back 50,000 years, and it also happens to be home to one of the largest deposits of natural gas in the country. Australia is one of the biggest exporters of liquefied natural gas, or LNG. The company Woodside is behind the project, which is known as the North West Shelf. It's the biggest and oldest gas plant in the country. It was due to close in 2030, and 6 years ago, Woodside applied to the WA and federal government for approvals to keep it open for longer. The WA government had approved it in December last year. This is Murray Watt. He's the new Environment Minister, and in one of his first actions in his new portfolio was to approve the extension of this gas plant until 2070. This approval is subject to strict conditions, and they mostly relate to air quality, and Woodside have 10 days to respond. The decision would bring the company one step closer to exploring and developing the Browse Basin, considered one of the country's biggest untapped resources. It's got enough gas reserves to meet Australia's domestic use for almost 20 years. And as you can see from the map, the Browse Basin is extremely remote. This decision could allow Woodside to finally develop it and connect it to the North West Shelf. So who supports this? Well, the WA government and the state's gas industry says this means jobs, billions of dollars of investments, and energy security. So who's against this? Well, scientists and environmentalists say this is a huge step back and will massively exacerbate climate change. Meanwhile, Indigenous groups say this could damage priceless rock paintings in the area. Climate groups have labelled Browse a climate bomb, claiming it could contribute up to 1.6 billion tonnes of CO2 emissions over its lifetime. For context, that's 3 times Australia's annual pollution output. Australia has committed to net zero, but because most of this gas is for export, we won't be considered responsible for these emissions. But extracting their gas also emits a lot of CO2, which we will be responsible for. And scientists say Woodside's plan to deal with that by using carbon capture won't work. So there is a weird quirk in the Australian legislation. Under the existing laws, when the Australian government was deciding whether to approve or reject this project, it didn't have to consider the impacts of climate change. Minister Watt, however, did have to consider economic impacts and any potential damage to nearby rock paintings. Minister Watt rejected claims that rock art in the area would be affected by saying that the gas plant physically wouldn't be any bigger, but Indigenous groups say emissions are still damaging the paintings. Traditional owners are now preparing a legal challenge to this decision, and scientists and environmentalists say this is a massive step back in the fight against climate change.